Summer of 2010. Remember it. Feels like ages ago.
It does.
But back then, there was this name plastered all over the news, Anna Chapman, the red-hot Russian spy, the tabloids called her. Well, today we're diving deep into her story. We'll be separating truth from all the hype and exploring the world of espionage, going beyond just the headlines. If you find spy stories fascinating, if you love real-life intrigue, or if you're just curious about those hidden forces that shape our world, then this deep dive is for you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our future episodes.
What often gets missed is the incredible amount of work that goes into creating a spy like Anna Chapman.
Yeah.
Her life before her arrest might seem ordinary, but it was anything but accidental.
It really is intriguing how it all started. Just picture this. A young woman, only 19, she leaves Moscow for London, quickly marries a British guy, and jumps right into London's social scene.
That's classic espionage. Building connections, creating a normal-looking life. It's the perfect cover for what's called an intelligence operative deeply embedded in a target country.
It's like she was living a double life, right there in front of everyone. And it doesn't stop there. She ends up in New York, climbing the social ladder, mingling with powerful people, going to all the exclusive events. It's a pretty clear pattern.
It is, and that's the whole point of being an illegal, to infiltrate important circles, gain access, and maybe even influence decision makers. But here's the really fascinating part. The FBI was on to her the whole time, watching her every move.
Okay, now things get really interesting. Remember those blurry surveillance photos they showed on the news? The FBI had her under constant watch, documenting everything she did. And there were even reports about her Wednesday meetings. Sounds straight out of a spy movie, right?
Those meetings weren't about just casual coffee chats. They were carefully planned intelligence operations. Picture this. Chapman is in a coffee shop, working on her laptop like any other New Yorker. But she's actually using a temporary wireless network to send information to a Russian official who's discreetly waiting in a nearby vehicle.
That's amazing. It's like a secret exchange happening in broad daylight. It's like a high-stakes game of cat and mouse.
Yeah.
But why was the FBI so focused on her? What made her such a high priority?
It all comes down to a name you might not be familiar with. Alexander Potiev. The FBI had pulled off an incredible feat. They'd recruited Potiev as a double agent. He wasn't just any agent. He was a high-ranking officer in Directorate S, the department that manages illegals like Chapman who operate in North and South America.
Wow, so they had a mole right inside Russian intelligence.
Yeah.
That's a game changer. How did the information from Potiev affect the operation?
It was a treasure trove of information. Potiev basically became the handler for the illegals in the U.S., including Chapman. He gave the FBI an unprecedented look into their activities, how they communicated, even their performance reviews. It just shows how powerful human intelligence, what we call human, is in the world of espionage.
It really does sound like something right out of a spy novel. So the FBI knew exactly what she was doing, but they couldn't just arrest her right away. Why the delay?
Timing is everything in espionage. This was 2010, and President Obama was trying to reset relations with Russia. Dmitry Medvedev, who was the Russian president back then, was on a state visit to the U.S. The last thing the White House wanted was a diplomatic crisis.
Oh, I can just imagine those headlines. Spy ring busted during high-profile visit. That would have been a disaster. So how did the FBI handle this delicate situation? What was their next move?
They went with a classic false flag operation, a staged scenario designed to trap Chapman and get solid evidence. They used an undercover agent posing as a Russian official to contact her and give her what seemed like a very urgent task.
This is getting intense. What was the task?
The undercover agent told Chapman to deliver a fake passport to another illegal operating under a made-up identity. The plan was to catch her red-handed, proving her intent to work for a foreign government without being properly registered, which is a serious crime in the U.S.
That's smart, but also incredibly risky. What if Chapman suspected something was wrong? Spies are trained to be suspicious, right?
Her reaction is really interesting. Transcripts from the meeting show she was obviously nervous, kept asking for confirmation of the undercover agent's identity, and was worried about being watched. It seemed like her instincts were telling her something wasn't right.
That's understandable, given her training and the stakes involved. So what did she do after that meeting? Did she try to contact her Russian handlers?
Instead of panicking or trying to run, she did something surprising. She called her father for advice.
And this is where her background comes into play, right? Her father, a former KGB officer himself, adds a whole new level of intrigue to the story. What did he tell her to do?
He gave her some surprisingly good advice. He told her to report the incident to the police and give them the fake passport. He thought that acting like a concerned citizen might make people less suspicious and help her keep her cover.
Wow, that's a bold move, like something out of a spy movie. Did it work? Did the police believe her story?
That's what makes this case so fascinating. Chapman went to the police station completely unaware that she was walking into a meticulously planned FBI trap. The detectives she spoke to weren't actually from the NYPD. They were undercover FBI agents stalling for time.
Wait a minute, you mentioned earlier that President Medvedev was visiting the U.S. at that time. Were these things happening at the same time?
Exactly. Remember that famous burger outing Obama and Medvedev had? Well, while they were enjoying their burgers, Chapman was at the police station, patiently answering questions, looking through mugshots, totally oblivious to the fact that they were about to close in on her.
This is incredible. It's like a real-life thriller playing out at the same time as a diplomatic lunch. So what happened next? Did the FBI finally make their move?
The FBI was on edge, waiting for the go-ahead. Finally, they got word that Medvedev's plane had left U.S. airspace. That was their signal. The agents, who had been pretending to be detectives, revealed who they really were and arrested Chapman right there in the police station.
What a dramatic ending. The timing, the deception, all the different players involved in this story just keeps getting more and more fascinating. But her arrest wasn't the end of Anna Chapman's story, was it?
Oh, not even close. This is just the beginning. Her arrest set off a media frenzy, and the way people talked about Anna Chapman took some really interesting turns. The arrest of those Russian illegals, Chapman included, it really shook up the media, but the coverage, especially around Chapman, it quickly became sensationalized.
Yeah, it did. It was like this media circus, all fueled by stereotypes and this need for a captivating story.
Mm-hmm.
Chapman was on every tabloid cover called the red-hot Russian spy, the femme fatale. People were obsessed with her looks, her love life, and this almost ridiculous portrayal of her using seduction as a tool of espionage, the whole honey trap narrative.
And that's the dangerous part. Focusing on Chapman's appearance actually downplayed the threat she posed. It turned this complex intelligence operation into a simple and exciting storyline, feeding into all those existing ideas about female spies.
It's a perfect example of how the media, in trying to find a good story, can totally miss the bigger picture. But her story didn't end with the arrest and all the media hype, right? What happened after that?
Well, the next chapter involved a move straight out of the Cold War, a prisoner exchange, a spy swap that grabbed the world's attention.
Oh, yeah. The U.S. and Russia agreed to exchange prisoners. It felt like something out of a spy novel. But what can you tell us about that?
It happened in July 2010, just weeks after the arrests at Vienna airport. Very carefully planned, lots of secrecy and tension. The U.S. released 10 people accused of spying for Russia, and in return, they got 4 people who were imprisoned in Russia for working with Western intelligence. One of the people Russia released was Sergei Skripal, a former Russian military intelligence officer.
Wait, Skripal, that name rings a bell. Wasn't he involved in something else big years later?
Yes, that's right. In 2018, Skripal and his daughter were poisoned with Novichok in Salisbury, England. It became a major international incident that made the relationship between the West and Russia even worse. It's a chilling reminder of how far-reaching espionage can be and just how complex the world of intelligence really is.
It definitely adds another layer of intrigue to this already fascinating story, connecting events across years and continents like that.
But back to Anna Chapman. What happened to her when she went back to Russia? Did she disappear from public view?
Not at all. She actually embraced the spotlight, the whole spy babe persona the media had given her. She seemed to understand how powerful her image was and how to use it to her advantage.
So she turned her notoriety into a brand. That's pretty smart. Did she actually turn this whole thing into something good for herself?
She did. Chapman became a media personality in Russia, appearing on TV, on magazine covers, even going to events with Russian cosmonauts. She even had her own TV show called Secrets of the World, where she explored mysteries and conspiracies. It really shows that sometimes truth can be stranger than fiction. It's amazing how she took control of her story and turned what could have been a career-ending scandal into a way to gain fame and influence. It makes you wonder how much of it was planned and how much was just going with the flow.
That's the question that keeps people fascinated by her story. Was she a master manipulator, carefully crafting her public image? Or was she simply adapting to her situation? Either way, her actions definitely challenged the initial idea of her as a naive pawn in a bigger game.
And let's not forget about the Russian government's role in all of this. They welcomed back the swap spies, Chapman included, as heroes, making her seem even more like a patriotic figure.
It's a stark contrast to how things were in the U.S., where they were seen as the bad guys. It shows how differently cultures view espionage and the lasting power of national narratives.
It reminds us that the world of espionage is often seen through the lens of national interests and ideologies. So Chapman returned to Russia, embraced her new fame, and seemed to do well. What did she do with all this? Did she just fade into the background as a celebrity, or did she use her influence for something more?
It was a bit of both, really. She used her notoriety to build a diverse career, hosting her show, modeling for magazines like Maxim, even starting her own fashion line. And she became a big deal on social media, with a lot of followers.
It's like she took a bad situation and made the best of it. But was it all just to play for fame and fortune, or was there more to it? Did she use her platform to push certain agendas or beliefs?
That's where it gets really interesting. While she started by building a personal brand, she gradually moved towards more political activities. She became a vocal supporter of Vladimir Putin and criticized Western governments, especially the U.S. She even hosted a show called Red Alert on RT, the Russian state-controlled network, where she talked about international affairs and often presented a pro-Russian view on things.
So she went from spy babe to political commentator. That's quite a change. What kind of impact did her commentary have? Did she have a big audience, or was it more of a niche following?
It's tough to say exactly how influential she was, but she definitely had a platform and used it to push a certain narrative. Her shows on RT, which is known for its pro-Kremlin stance, reached a global audience, giving her a chance to share her views on a lot of different issues. Whether she changed people's minds is debatable, but she definitely became a recognizable figure representing a particular viewpoint on the world stage.
It's interesting how she used her unique experience to carve out this niche for herself. But what about the other illegals who were swapped back to Russia? Did they follow a similar path, or was Chapman's trajectory an anomaly?
Most of the others chose to keep a much lower profile. Chapman's path was definitely unusual. Her story makes us question our assumptions about spies and how we see them. The media's obsession with her looks hid the fact that she could have been a very dangerous operative. If the FBI hadn't been watching her so closely, thanks to Potiev's intel, she could have used her social connections to get sensitive information and maybe cause serious damage.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that espionage is a serious business with real-world consequences, even if movies and TV shows often make it seem glamorous.
Exactly. It's not all about fancy gadgets and thrilling car chases. It's about careful planning, building relationships, and fitting in. It's about understanding how people think, taking advantage of weaknesses, and manipulating perceptions.
It makes you realize there's this whole hidden world working right under the surface, a world of secrets and deception that most of us are totally clueless about.
It really does. It's not always about gadgets and exciting car chases. It's about careful planning, building relationships, and fitting in. It's about understanding how people think, taking advantage of weaknesses, and manipulating perceptions.
It makes you realize that there's this whole hidden world operating right under the surface, a world of secrets and deception that most of us are totally clueless about.
And that's exactly what makes espionage so compelling, isn't it? It's a glimpse into a world that operates outside the boundaries of conventional rules and norms. It's a world where information is power, and the stakes can be incredibly high.
It's both fascinating and a little unsettling, right? The idea that these operations are happening all around us, shaping events in ways we might never fully comprehend.
It's a reminder that we should always be critical of the information we consume, especially when it comes to sensationalized stories like this one. We need to look beyond the headlines and try to understand the complexities beneath the surface.
And perhaps the most important takeaway from Chapman's story is the reminder that espionage is not a relic of the Cold War. It's an ongoing reality, a constant presence in a world where information is power. Nations are constantly vying for an edge, seeking to gain insights into each other's strategies and intentions.
And as technology advances and the world becomes increasingly interconnected, the methods and motivations of those involved in espionage will only become more sophisticated and harder to detect.
So what does the Anna Chapman story really tell us about the world of espionage? Is it as glamorous and simplistic as it's often portrayed in movies and TV shows?
Definitely not. Chapman's journey from a seemingly ordinary London socialite to a high-profile Russian spy highlights the complex and often unpredictable nature of this clandestine world. It's a world where identities are fluid, motives are often obscured, and the stakes can be incredibly high.
And it's a world we often only glimpse through the lens of media coverage, which, as we've seen, can be heavily influenced by biases, stereotypes, and the desire for a captivating narrative.
Exactly. The media's focus on Chapman's appearance and the honey trap narrative overshadowed the more significant aspects of her story, her potential to cause real harm, the intricate web of intelligence gathering, and the high-stakes maneuvers of international spy agencies.
It's a reminder that we should always be critical of the information we consume, especially when it comes to sensationalized stories like this one. We need to look beyond the headlines and try to understand the complexities beneath the surface.
And perhaps the most important takeaway from Chapman's story is the reminder that espionage is not a relic of the Cold War. It's an ongoing reality, a constant presence in a world where information is power.
And that brings us to a final, somewhat unsettling thought. If one Anna Chapman could operate so effectively for so long, how many more are out there, hidden in plain sight, working towards goals we may never fully understand?
It's a question worth pondering. The world of espionage operates in the shadows, and we often only become aware of it when something goes wrong, when a spy is caught, a network is exposed, or a secret operation is revealed. But for every case that comes to light, there are countless others that remain hidden, their impact unknown.
It's a sobering thought, and it leaves us with a sense of both fascination and unease. The Anna Chapman story, with all its twists and turns, serves as a powerful reminder of the hidden world of espionage, a world that operates just beneath the surface of our everyday lives, influencing events in ways we may never fully comprehend.
And it serves as a reminder that in this world of secrets and shadows, vigilance and critical thinking are our most valuable tools.